Wow, wasn't this event a messed up, mediocre mountain of murder? So with network issues, because my Netflix lagged I don't know how many times throughout that entire event, and an unbelievable amount of hype for a letdown, there's only one redeemable feature of this event, but we'll talk about that later. But for now, let's focus on what was the feature event here. So beside the hype for this, the promotion of this going on for months, how did this match end up being so freaking boring? Exhibition matches should at least be more entertaining than usual. This was really bad for Jake Paul's reputation and image, and I'm not defending him, I'm just saying it looks bad and it was boring. I also think Jake was really out of shape, because by the third round, the dude was breathing like he ran up 40 flights of stairs, when he's been heavy-footed dancing around the ring for only 6 minutes. Mike Tyson, on the other hand, never looked exhausted like this kid was. That's pretty embarrassing when the rounds have been shortened to 2 minutes instead of the usual 3. But there is a few things that I did like about this. And for the worst boxing match that I've ever witnessed, Mike could still move. This was overblown out of proportion, we all know that, but for 58 years old, his gears and his joints were well greased, and if not, he trained harder for this, because his endurance was there. If this was for real, Mike would have taken that cash and just knocked the hell out of Jake. He probably would have given Jake brain damage. But let's focus on Jake now. Jake will never, ever face a real challenge in his life, as long as he pays his large sum forward to whomever he feels like bringing out of retirement. Tommy Fury is the closest he's come to being in a real fight. El Gallo, or as I like to say, El Guano, is just another rich kid wiping his ass with poorly designed PR stunts. And he suffers from something I like to call ICMS. Now, what is IMCS, or IMIX for short? It's an acronym I've created which stands for Inserted Main Character Syndrome, where using his own money promotes himself like an underdog against fighters who have had real careers in the sport, and Jake just lives it like he's the main character in an underdog sports story. And because of his IMCS, he will come off as overconfident and arrogant, like he's believing his own lies and fantasy and honestly thinks he's a pro fighter. In the meantime, a semi-pro could probably wipe the floor with him. Now let's talk fantasy. Everyone so far has been comparing this to Rocky IV, where Apollo fights Drago and Apollo ends up dying. I think it's more like the 6th Rocky film, where Rocky, now in his late 50s, fights Mason Dixon, a young up-and-coming champion in boxing, and he does it in an exhibition match. The difference between this movie and this fight is that Rocky actually went the distance, with 3-minute regulation rounds and 12 in total. He actually did some damage. That was more entertaining than this is supposed to be a real-life exhibition, and it ended up being really fucking boring. That's pretty bad. This fight was too short, and because of my Netflix lagging about 5 times when it came down to this event, it felt longer and more boring. Jake Paul looked awful. He got a few solid hits in, but other than that, he was flailing around like a panicked lobster. Mike was in better shape than he was, and especially when the endurance comes into play. Mike's movements were well thought and consistent, while Jake is just kind of dancing there like he's got weasels in his pants. Let's talk about everything that's in Jake's favor. The commentators were saying everything in Jake's favor. They were basically completely shitting on Mike Tyson for no apparent reason, especially when Jake looked like the opposite of what they were saying. Also, they kept downplaying the overwhelming amount of boos that were erupting in that arena. While Jake Paul was the focus, or the main focus of what was going on, there was an overwhelming amount of boos. I could not hear the hoorays over the amount of boos. That was pretty bad. Everybody and the commentators were terrible. Mike is sitting there like a stoic, relaxed guy. He's got the endurance to go to distance with Jake, even though it was 8 short rounds. And the commentators were saying, oh, Tyson looks out of breath. Maybe he forgot his arthritis medication before he got in there. Everything here was cultivated in Jake's favor. From quieting down the boos when Jake was the center of attention, to the commentators basically disrespecting Mike Tyson. Wow. How shitty and how low can you go?
Mike's hurt. He see Jake Paul Land a beautiful jab with right hand first. Right there, and knocked Mike off balance 2 times. And Mike was highly off balance right there. I don't like how his legs look.
Jake Paul, you're right, Roy. He's turning into a boxer.
Yep. Oh, good.
So between networking issues and a horrible match between a boxing legend and a rich, obnoxious IMC, this event has one redeemable factor that makes it worth watching. And that's the match between Amanda Serrano and Katie Taylor. Those two really gave it their all, and it seemed more like the money's worth of that event. Though I think Taylor winning was a bit controversial, especially since she had 2 clumsy headbutts while Serrano was holding her own like a warrior. But that's just my opinion. The women's match deserves all the attention and praise from this event, but it's only going to get a small fraction of that because you know why? Everybody's just going to be covering Jake Paul boasting about how he beat Mike Tyson. And that's honestly sad. A pair of people that really gave it their all and put it into a brutal boxing match, which looked like a real boxing match, and everybody's just going to be talking about Jake Paul, boasting. I'm like, don't give the prick the satisfaction. Don't give him any more attention. Focus on Serrano and Taylor. That's the real highlight of this event. It is actually really funny. The idea of rigging a fight is making it look real enough that whoever wins or loses won't matter because the crowd is entertained. And this was a complete caravan of garbage.